Welcome back to the Transform Your Mind to Transform Your Life radio, podcast, and television show. I'm your host, life coach Myrna Young, and sitting in the guest chair today is Sara Lynne George. Sara and I are going to be talking on the topic, what are the signs of trauma bonding? Welcome, Sara.
Well, thank you for having me.
You're very welcome. All right. Yeah. So let's get into our conversation. So, first of all, let me give you a brief introduction. Sara Lynne George is a seasoned freelance writer and published author of 3 books. The first one is the self-help guide, Don't You Dare Text Him Back, Toxic Relationship Recovery. The second one is the novelette, I've Never Been to France, She, Her. And the third one is Ma OHW, the Bipolar Poet. These works have resonated strongly with readers, ranking highly in the categories like trauma, toxic relationships, and books for women. In her book, Don't You Dare Text Him Back, it's a powerful guide for anyone caught in an abusive relationship and struggling to break free. It's not just about leaving, it's about reclaiming your life, healing from trauma bonding, and finding the strength to rely on yourself. This book empowers readers to take back control of their lives by offering clear, actionable steps to break the cycle of abuse, build self reliance, and start the healing journey towards real love and happiness. So, this is one of the books that we're going to be discussing today. But I want to start off, Sara, with your book, I've Never Been to France. In this book, you share your journey or a little bit of your story about addiction, trauma, and the underworld of high-end escorting. So as we set the table for our talk, and we're going to trapeze a lot of topics today. We're going to talk about trauma. We're going to be talking about addiction, and we're going to be talking about one of your books. You talk about bipolar. So we're going to be talking about a couple of things. So share your story with us so that we can understand the foundation of what you're doing in your books.
Um, Basically, I do touch on some pretty heavy issues. Because I've been through some pretty heavy experiences from a young age. I did experience trauma, which led me to have some negative coping mechanisms, and I didn't really know how to deal with, anything that came at me. I was dealing with it negatively. I didn't know how to really take, um, some of the situations that I was in at a young age. I didn't know how to basically cope with them. So yeah, I turned to definitely unhealthy things that didn't bring me to the right places in life, and it was just very difficult to kind of get through all of that. And I felt that when I did get through it, I wanted to help others that were going through the same thing. And that's where I initially started writing. I wrote Don't You Dare Text Him Back. I was in a toxic relationship for several years that led me to feel trauma bonded to somebody. And it was just this experience that I've never couldn't even explain at the time because it takes over everything. Everything in your life is revolved around that. And so once that was out of my life, I was able to kind of focus on my writing. And I did do a guide, I Don't You Dare Text Him Back. And that was a guide to help navigate through a breakup, basically a toxic relationship recovery Bible. That's what people were calling it. And it did really help people just kind of move forward and let go and reclaim their life. And so my past allowed me to do that. So I'm very thankful for all the trauma I've been through, and I'm very thankful to be able to help others navigate through their trauma now in a healthy way because I didn't really have that for myself.
Yeah. So, one of the things that coaches and authors do is they help others to maybe come to a better conclusion, because a lot of times we don't have the skills, we don't understand how to respond to things, and yeah, so books and coaching and therapy and things like that help us once we've gone through trauma or childhood issues. They help us to deal with it as an adult. Now, one of the things that you talk about in your book is how does this trauma affect your life? So the first thing you just talked about is the fact that the trauma that you went through as a child affected allowed you to go into toxic relationships. And then one of the things you talk about is trauma bonding. So maybe we can start there. So, um, uh, why do you think you stayed in a toxic relationship for the amount of time that you did? And what exactly is trauma bonding?
Um, well, let's start. What trauma bonding is? It's where you experience trauma with your a partner, somebody in a relationship, and you feel that they are the only ones that will understand you, and basically you have the bond through trauma, which is consistently fighting, abuse, drugs, of that nature. That just you feel bonded to that person, and you feel nobody else will ever understand me except this person, and really, the trauma bond is different for everybody, I can say that, but, for me, I will say that it was unlike any other experience. It's an addiction that your body actually goes through, your brain has your serotonin receptors actually induce or recept they push through more serotonin when you're with that person and you're happy, and then your dopamine levels decrease when you're not with them, so it is like an addiction, you crave that person. And, yeah, and it's like when you actually get away from it, it's like you're getting off of heroin or, a hard drug. That's what they say. Yeah, and it's very emotionally damaging. Just leaving that person is traumatic, but of course you're getting to a positive thing, but, going through it is, the signs of, I would say, trauma bonding are basically low self-confidence, isolating yourself, from parents or, any family members really that care about you and want you to that question your relationship. So even friends, if they question your relationship, you're probably staying away from them because you don't want to be told that. You don't want to see what's really going on. You kind of want to blind yourself to that. Um, a feeling of that nobody will love you, that you don't have anybody else that will love you after this person, that this is, the end of everything. And then um, also trying to break free from it, but you just can't get away from it. You feel like you're stuck in a situation, even if it's unhealthy. Um, decrease in self-confidence, your hygiene even goes down. You're not taking care of yourself. You don't brush your hair, you don't brush your teeth, you don't want to do anything except focus on that relationship. You lose sleep, it's a very unhealthy kind of situation to be in for anybody. Even males go through it, females and males go through it, and it is a bond between two people, so both people are experiencing this in different ways. So that's
Well, I've actually never heard of that. So I'm glad that I chose this to be the topic from all of your books. So I I know that people stay in abusive relationships, for instance. This is where my experience is in this. Like for instance, a woman will stay in an abusive relationship when her boyfriend or husband beats her because she feels that he's beating her because he loves her, right? So I don't understand the addiction to another person. When and I'm assuming the trauma bond can be when someone loves you or when somebody shows you love and you get addicted to that love. But how do you get addicted to someone if they're treating you bad? Can you go into detail about that?
Yes, because yeah, of course. And you're right. It doesn't seem possible, but it's because they treat you good as well. You go through the highs and the lows, and so you experience the ups, the downs, and during the times when it's great, it's really great. And the time when it's bad, it's really bad, but you're just searching to get back to that good. And most people don't obviously don't get back there, but you're always searching for that beginning, searching for the person that they were in the beginning, basically.
Wow. Okay. Well, you know something? I've heard that one before. I've heard that particular thing before where um I have a friend that was in a relationship with someone. And she made the comment about when it's good, it's really good. And when it's bad, it's really bad. But that's because this person was almost bipolar. So when they got the high, they treated you really good. And then they argue about the slightest thing and take the argument for days. But I didn't correspond it to bonding. So you also have a book about the bipolar poet. So is this something to do with bipolarism, where you get the highs and the lows?
Definitely. I would say that in my case, it is. It is definitely a big contributing factor to all my trauma. I have bipolar disorder. I was diagnosed later in life. I was 24 at diagnosis, which is pretty late. But I did not treat it. I did not take medication. I was very unhealthy, and I didn't feel that I wanted to mask the highs as some people will do, is they enjoy that high, they enjoy the manic, they enjoy that mania. Instead of being stable and realizing, your emotions aren't regulated, you shouldn't be like this. You should be, just an even keel and feel how you feel, but not an extreme emotion where you're making negative decisions. And that's where mine was. I I can say that it's been a while since I've experienced that. I have definitely have it under control, and I have for several years, but I remember the feeling, and I remember that it was definitely a big factor in all the abuse in my relationship. And I mean, when it when it was, the highs were going, I was running away. I just wanted to be free, and I'm a free spirit. And then when there were the lows, I'm in bed crying all day. And, that could be frustrating to some people, but most people would cope a little differently than somebody that was abusive. Someone that has different ways of, handling things would be, definitely, that's how what I dealt with. It was abuse, and it was all
Well,
over.
the so the addiction to this person, when you talk about trauma bonding, was yours more intense because you um were bipolar, like, the highs of being with this person with the dopamine was higher than a regular person? Have you actually, dealt with someone else that had trauma bonding and it showed up differently than yours?
Oh yeah, yes. You see it every day almost.
Oh, really?
In my case, I mean, I guess I just maybe deal with a lot different group of people, but yeah, no, I see it, often. But yeah, and it is prevalent in today's society. I guess it's the generation, but um, either way, yeah, I have dealt with I know I've dealt with the highs and the lows, and I know that it was a contributing factor. I haven't really, I, I haven't really seen if it was a contributing factor for others, but I think now that you mention it, I'm definitely going to, because yeah, yeah, that's
Okay.
the key point.
Okay. All right. So, all right. So that was your book. Don't You Dare Text Him Back. And in that book, you talk about toxic relationships and trauma. So you didn't expand on your trauma. I'm not sure if you don't want to talk about it, but how do you think that your trauma affected your adult relationships? If you want to go in there.
Okay. Well, yeah, I've never been to France is a partial, I guess, a memoir, and there is a protagonist, but it is my childhood. And I do speak very real and raw in my book. Um, and my trauma started very early in life. As a little girl, a very young little girl, I dealt with sexual abuse, and I thought it was normal. I didn't know it was anything other than normal. And I grew up in a very nice home with both my parents. I had wonderful parents. I have a one stayed in the same home until I graduated high school. Just a wonderful family unit. We were there for each other, very supportive. However, I didn't know how to talk about that. About the abuse. I didn't know who to go to. I didn't know who to turn to, and I thought I was bad because of it. So that, growing up and not knowing who to talk to about this, personal dirty, which I thought dirty thing at that time. And it was dirty, now that I look, obviously, but so yeah, I didn't know how to deal with it. I didn't have anyone to talk to, and I grew up with this preconceived notion that I was a bad person, that I was bad, and that's not a normal way of thinking, obviously, but that's how I was. And so I just made these choices. I didn't think I deserved anything good, and I didn't think I deserved to be loved. I didn't feel like I deserved much of anything at all because I was this bad, person. And keeping it a secret from people, and when you're being told by an adult male as a kid, hey, don't tell anybody, this is not good, we don't want anyone to find out. And you feel that you're doing this, in secret, and it's just like you're doing something conniving and something dirty, but I was a victim, at that time. And I feel like it was just wasn't obviously I didn't have the right state of mind. I was 5, and it led me to definitely a dark path where depression kicked in. I feel that it didn't lead to my bipolar disorder. It led to a lot of my toxic behaviors that I had in relationships. The partners I would pick, were definitely the toxic partners, and that's what I was attracted to because I thought I deserved that. And so it led me to when I had a situation arise where I was homeless, I instead of thinking, okay, let's go get some help from public assistance. Let's go do, no, I have a different coping. I thought, how are we going to do this? Let's go just sell ourselves and make money, and that's not a normal way to think. And at that time it was. And so, yeah, that's what my trauma led me to. And that's why I write about it, and I am very open, I'm very raw. It's definitely a lot harder to talk about it because, it's you're faced with it. Writing it was difficult, but yeah, it's definitely a lot harder for me to talk about it, but I have come to terms with it. And I know that who I was yesterday is not who I am today. And so that's a beautiful thing.
Great. That's absolutely amazing. It's interesting. Um, I was sexually abused as well as a child. Mine started from about 10 to about 13, and I didn't think there was anything wrong with it until I started having a boyfriend and I realized that I was no longer a virgin. That's when I recognized that it was wrong because, I'm much older than you. So, back then, I mean, I came up in a third world country and all that, and people might think, I mean, why wouldn't you think that it was wrong or anything? I just didn't think it was wrong. Yeah, so, um, and then when I figured out it was wrong, I I I I didn't feel bad, but I felt ashamed. And I felt ashamed because, well, I guess I felt bad because my feeling was since I was no longer a virgin, I'm like a bad girl, right? Right. And so you already had sex, and no man is going to respect you because you're like a little, whatever. So that's how I felt. And I said this happened to me when I was 10, and I didn't talk about it until I wrote my book. And even when I wrote my book, I wrote my book in my 40s. Can you believe that? I wrote my book in my 40s, and even when I wrote my book in my 40s, I was still ashamed about it. And I wrote my book under a pen name because I didn't want anybody to know that it was me. But like what happens in this world is the more you talk about something, the more you are cleansed of it, right? And now I can talk about it freely. When I have someone on my show and they're talking about something and I see the effects of it, whether they cry or they can't talk about it, and I know they're still processing it. So like just now, I could tell that you're still processing it because yes, you can write about it because it's actually cathartic and it downloads and you write about it. But then talking to someone, I mean, you're talking to me, I'm a stranger to you, but we're broadcasting throughout the world. You do still have a shame about it. But what I have learned, and I tell people and anyone that's listening, is that you cannot give consent. And the fact that you cannot give consent, then you were a victim. You were not a person that is a bad person, or you're not a person that's nasty or dirty or anything like that. And it's very interesting. I didn't tell my parents. I didn't tell anybody. I kept it a secret. Nobody knew. I kept it a secret. Um, and then when I wrote my book and I showed my mom and my mom said, "You should never put that in the book." And my dad said, "Oh, all the time I was what you were carrying on." And I was actually very upset with that because that was a very stupid comment because I was not carrying on. I was a victim of a older man. He was in his 50s, you know what I mean? And I was 10, right? So I'm not carrying on. But this is how society looks at things, which is why we carry the shame. But the good thing about it is that one, you're writing your books, you're helping someone else because I heard a statistic that there is a lot of kids that are sexually abused, especially in our community, African American community, because what we do is we don't have babysitting. So we drop our kids off at the uncle and the aunts or whatever, and that's who sexually abused you. Who was the person that abused you? Because you said it wasn't your parents. Because you lived in who was it? Somebody you knew?
Wasn't a family member, no family, no one like that, but it was a neighbor who lived right next door. And I'm not sure what age it started because I didn't remember it until I was actually in a situation where I was in a sexual position. I was working and I something flashed and I remembered everything. It was just something triggered
Something
it.
else, huh? Wow.
And then it triggered it, and then I remember that night just crying all night in the hotel room, not being able to do anything, just crying because I realized what had happened, and it kind of like was a moment for me to realize, wow, this really did shape me as a person. This person even took my life from me, it took my childhood from me, and I was angry and upset, and I was yeah, I actually wrote a long email, and I knew that something had happened. So when I did know as a child, that something had happened. I remember him giving me a dollar to help him clean his trailer at a motorhome and going in the motorhome and giving a dollar. And I remember me thinking about that. I always did not want to think about that. And there was a reason for it. I didn't want to face the fact that, yeah, this happened to me and I allowed it, and that's really what I was telling myself. I didn't allow it. Like he was
No, like I said, we can't give consent. So even if you think that you allowed it because you didn't tell anyone, or you allowed it because whatever happens in our minds, especially with my case, it was somebody that I loved. It was my godfather, and he showered me with a lot of love. He showered me a lot of things, you know what I mean? And I thought that it was normal, you know what I mean? Until I got to 13 and started having boyfriends and realized that boyfriends wants you to have sex, and that's who you're supposed to have sex with. And anyway, so it messed me up for quite a while myself. And then my trigger was when my daughter was born. I want to make sure that nobody abused her. So that was my adult trigger. But as a child, yeah. So I mean, this is a good conversation to have because yes, there are so many women that have been abused sexually, in their childhood. Maybe the Me Too movement, highlighted a lot of things, even as young adults, that women have to go through, and they all carry this shame. In fact, there is a company that I had signed up to, and it talks about speaking because nobody the telltale sign is that you don't tell anybody. You don't tell anybody, right? And yeah, because you feel shame, right? And I'm not quite sure why. Probably because we all don't want to talk about sex. That's got to be the thing. I think why everybody feels shame and nobody wants to talk about it. So um but yeah, we you can't give consent, which is why even at 14 years old, it's still rape. You know what I mean? And we were talking about, 5 to 10, this type of thing. You know what I mean? Obviously, yeah, and it depends again. The kids these days are more experienced because they watch television, they watch shows, they're more adult, right? In my day, we weren't adult. We were talking what in the 70s here, right? Or right in the 70s. So it's a totally different thing. And then you're in a terrible country. You're not watching television. You're just growing up, depending on the adults around you to be your lead, right? And if that's the way they're leading you, that's what you're gonna think it's normal. Though, yeah. Now, a lot of times, the flip side of that is what you just mentioned, that because you were introduced to sex at a young age, you feel like, I think you mentioned that when you were homeless, instead of getting a regular job, you went into the high end world of escorting because I guess you felt an affinity to that. You want to explain? You said something about a connection a minute ago. What was the connection there?
Yes. Well, I also would like to mention that, I, I did the first, I guess, episode of sexual abuse, which was ended about when I was in kindergarten, but I believe it started a lot younger, maybe 3, so it was a few years for me as well. It was a start of a long line of abusers and sexual abuse. I've had like 4 or 5 different incidents as a child where I was naked, and I can't say that, where I was in situations that I shouldn't have been in, and that led to that. But then there was also a situation where, it wasn't even I was just taking a shower, and, I in my grandfather's house, and the tenant walks in the shower as I'm in the shower, and I, speak about this in my book, and that was like, and it was normal for me because I was so accommodating as a child, just to be look a certain way, that's how I was raised. It's how you look, not how you feel. And I had to look a certain way and play a certain part, that I was so accommodating to everybody. I couldn't say no. I couldn't speak up. I couldn't tell, because I didn't want to be looked at in a certain way. Like you were saying, we have to be perceived as a certain way in society. And really, that's what's causing a lot of this is what's causing a lot of the trauma. It is what's causing all these toxic behaviors, because we're not allowed to talk about the things that happen to us. And I'd love to normalize that, where, me and you could just talk, and, I don't feel nervous about it. And it's just that thing where, they're the problem. We're not the problem.
No.
They so why are we walking around feeling this load on our shoulders? And I love to just take that, and take that victim out of it and make them the victim. I'm done with feeling like that, a victim, and that's what I want people that are going through that now to know as well. So you were saying that, but I did get into back to your question. I did get into that life because I experienced homelessness, and I didn't want to lose my child. I had a 2-year-old, and I knew that at being homeless, you can't have a child on the streets, and I wanted to do the best for him. So I posted an ad on Craigslist, for some help, and I wasn't looking for that, per se. Didn't think that until somebody approached me, and I said, why not? And I think if I wouldn't have had the abuse in my past, I'm sure I would have said, oh my gosh, no, I have respect for myself. At that time, I was willing to do anything, and that led me into a world of madness. But it was definitely, a whirlwind of just a world that I've never even knew existed. And it was, in a Los Angeles, Hollywood area. And I went through this, big, long piece of my life that I would never take back. I regret nothing. It's a big thing to me. I regret nothing about that, because it made me the person I am today. And I understand my thought process then, and I understand my thought process now. I know it's different, and I know what caused it. And I'm thankful for where I'm at now. And yeah, so
Okay. Well, yeah. I mean, we all make choices, and I'm glad that you said that you don't regret anything, because living with regret doesn't do anything for you. What you need to do is take the lessons from the past and make it work for your future. For instance, I was listening to this book this morning, and they were saying that people say that the past is already gone and you shouldn't focus on it. But he was saying that the past is in the present because whatever happened in the past shows up in your thoughts, shows up in the present, right? So it's never really gone, right? So yeah, if you embrace your past and what it taught you about life and it's think, obviously it taught you survival skills. You survived, you got to do what you got to do. And you God give you beauty and made you a woman, and hey, if you can use that, then why not, I have to, I have to watch the movie. The movie that got all the awards this year at the Academy Awards was about this same kind of profession, and I got to watch the movie. I don't remember the name of it now, but it was with workers, sex workers and people that have to go through escorting or whatever. um and she had to do it because he followed some boyfriend, and that's basically her survival. So but yeah, I mean, nobody can sit and judge because people make decisions based on where they're at in their time of their life, right? So and you're obviously you've passed that right now, and like you said, it's important for it's a process where you came through the abusive process, you've been through that process, and now you're in another trajectory. You're an author and you're doing great things, and you told me you were just in Vegas speaking. So hey, you're helping others come through their dark passage. So that's good. All right. So you mentioned that trauma bonding is where you are addicted to a person being in your presence. People would call that love and infatuation, where when someone is not with you, you feel bad, and when they're with you, you feel good. It's not love. So what makes it a trauma bond?
Okay, so there's a big difference between love and codependency. um, I don't want you, I don't need you, I want you is the main thing. When you need somebody, it becomes a different type of relationship. When you want somebody and it's reciprocated, and that's also, a different, more healthy relationship. But when I would say, what makes it a trauma bond is give and take. There's on one side, there's a lot more give, and the other side, there's a lot more take. And, and that's where you get depleted of your former self. You get depleted of who you once were, and relationships don't do that to you. If anything, they build you up. They don't bring you down. So when that person is making you feel like less of who you are, and your goals, they start to disappear, and your family and friends they stop talking to you because they can't deal with all the drama, the abuse, and seeing you so unhappy. And when you're stuck in that unhappiness and that depression, and you just want that person to take you out of it, and you feel like they're the only ones that can fix it. They saw you go from wonderful, self-confident, beautiful, to this, scared, lonely, insecure person, because they made that in you. They wanted that in you because they knew you weren't going to leave them. And if you were like that, and so then you're searching for them to bring you out and bring you back to who they met. So you're not really searching for them to be themselves. You're searching for you to be yourself again. And that's what a lot of people misinterpret, in my opinion. I was never searching for him to be himself. I was searching for me to find myself again. And I thought he could help me find that. But in order to do that, you need to step out of that, and then you'll find yourself again, because
Mm,
you can't rely on anybody for your happiness.
wow.
And that's
Yeah,
what it
well,
is to me.
that's very interesting. So like I said, this is a new topic for me. I was not aware that you can be addictive to someone and you know need to have them. Just like how you need an addiction drug. Right, right. Wow. Okay. So how can you break free of it? I mean, when you're addicted to drugs, you can stop taking the drugs. How do you break free of being addicted to a human.
Um, it's like you said, you can stop taking the drugs, right? And it's you can stop texting him back too. So, and that's what my book is all about is don't you dare text him back because it's just cut him off contact and never look back. And that's really you have to do that. If you want to reclaim your life, you need to cut off all communication. You need to stop enabling and you need to just get away from the situation. It's not always easy, when you have kids, when you have, if you own homes together, there's financials, there's family dynamics, anything like that is going to make it a little more difficult. But in my book, I do discuss that and how to navigate through that. But the main thing is until you're at that point where you can talk to them without wanting them so bad that it changes alters your whole mind, you need to not text them back. Yeah, that's my
Wow.
Norway.
Wow. So is that the book that's a workbook that you show people, you tell your audience what to go, your listener or your reader, sorry, what to go through when they want to text them back,
Yes,
when they
yeah,
feel that need and the urge? Because
yeah,
wow, that is very difficult if you've got this urge. Because if you're craving, and you're right, if it's taken over your dopamine and your all that, how do you go through that?
well, I in the beginning of the book, there's a little questionnaire because at first I want to make sure that people are understanding of what relationship they're in. They could also be the contributing factor to this the abuse. And in my case, it was both of us. I was also toxic. He was toxic. It wasn't just him. But yeah, and then there's another. So in the beginning, it is discussing, what type of relationship you have and figuring that out. So once you figure that out, it's going to lead you through the book and it's going to guide you through step one, step two. It's basically it's a step by step guide on how to get the heck away from this toxic guy. And so I have it in front of me here. But yeah, it is there's 7 steps and basically the first one I just is an introduction, the second one is compromise, and the third one is the switch, which is where you realize, hey, I'm not going to do this anymore. I'm done. We're not doing this. And then not only the switch in you, but the switch in the person as well. And you could see their behavior and how they start to treat you. And it navigates how to handle their manipulation. When you finally put your foot down, the amount of manipulation a person is going to spit out at you when they're toxic is unreal and unbelievable. And that's a very big factor in being able to leave somebody that is toxic is knowing how to navigate their behaviors and knowing what is real, knowing what's not real, and knowing that this person is doing this in order to manipulate you and guide your decisions. So, and then, yeah, just there's, here it is. Yeah, if anyone wants to pick it up and if they're, need help navigating through relationships, I really wrote that. The way I wrote it was kind of a funny story. I sat down and I was mad. I was angry and I was over it. And how women we get that, no, I'm not doing this anymore and we're done, and I wasn't done at this point actually. It took me a little bit longer, but I ended up reading my own book and ending it. But but yeah, I wrote it in 3 days. I was so mad. And I was like, no. And then I was like, no, I never want a woman to ever experience what I'm going through right now. I want to basically tell myself how to leave while helping others leave. And that's what it ultimately did was my book helped me leave. So I know if it helped me leave, it can help anybody leave. Um,
Wow.
yeah.
So you got the download about how to leave before you left.
Exactly. Yes, exactly. Yes.
Wow.
Kind of
Wow.
ironic, but yeah.
That's good. That's good. Okay. So all right. So we're coming to the end of our conversation. So that was the book, Don't You Dare Text Them Back. So talk about your other two books. The other one is I've Never Been to France. I love your titles, you know. So tell us about that book. I've Never Been to France. Now, is that you call it a novelette?
That
Is
is
that
more
a true story or what?
yeah, yeah, and that's what everyone asks me that, and it is a true story. It is a true story, and it is my story, and it is, you know, especially after our talk today, there's no shame, and in my past, and there's no shame in my trauma. And when there is shame, it means I did something wrong. And, it's not nothing we do unless we're maliciously going to hurt somebody, unless you want to hurt anyone and you're just there just to hurt, and just ruin someone's existence. You're not really doing anything wrong if you're just navigating through life based on choices that you think are correct. So yeah, that's my story, and it's a deep one, and it's a tough one, and it's definitely hard to read, I hear. For me, it was hard to write, so I can understand it being hard to read for some people. But yeah, on some of the reviews, a lot of people, some people couldn't even get through the book. It was that tough for them, which made me realize, yeah, well, maybe my life wasn't so normal, but it was mine. So that is definitely a book that was praised, the New York Times, and it made me feel so good to be praised by the New York Times and praised by these articles, that it made me feel so good inside to know that my story has value. And I'm hoping it just inspires others to get there and write, and just write whatever you feel, just write and tell your story, and we want to hear it, and your story has value too, and that's how I feel about everyone. So was my other book. And then I also have my last book, which is I'm a who, so it's Who Am I backwards, actually. But yeah, and it's the Bipolar Poet, and that is just, I actually wrote that more for young adults, to navigate bipolar disorder, and to a funny, humorous way of navigating through life's challenges while being bipolar. And it talks about, how I felt my highs, my lows, in a little rhyming, cute little way. And at the end, it talks about getting on medication, and wow, what is this life? What is, I could see the world again and for what it is. So hopefully that brings hope to people as well. And proceeds for that book are being donated to mental health awareness.
Mm, okay, very good. All right. Well, listen, girl, you have been through, and you're on the other end now. So very good. We're all, we're here with a purpose, and sometimes we've got to go through the suffering. Sometimes we've got to go through the trauma to get to our purpose. So this is your purpose, helping other women that are going through or have been through, giving them some hope, giving them some skills and some strategies in order to get through. So very good. So yes, I am impressed by your work. I'm glad that your New York Times is recognizing it. And you are a freelance writer, and I think I see you writing on Medium.
Yes, yes,
Right.
I write a review, and for the local newspaper. Yeah, anything I could write, I'll write.
Okay. Well, that's good. That's good. That's awesome. All right. Well, listen, I'm going to have a short, summary of our conversation on the show page, which is myhelps.us. I will link out to all three of your books. And are you on social media?
Um, I, um, I know I have an author's page, and that's my website, and that's about it. I try to stay away from social media.
Okay. All right. So, what is your website?
Yes. I will, it's author saralynnegeorge.com. So,
Okay. All right.
if you
Okay. All
want to,
right. Excellent. So, I will link out to that. So, that,
and then my books are available.
right. Your books are available on Amazon.
Yes, and Amazon, yeah, and then there's an author site there too, or if you just want to email that to me, that's okay as well.
Okay. All right. So I will link out to your author's page where they can get all the information. I'll link out to your books. And yes, listen. Sarah Lynn's books has a lot of information. She tells her story in a way that it's helpful to anyone that's listening. I mean, anyone that's reading it, to get some, tips to maybe put yourself in her story. And when you put yourself in her story, you can see a way out of the darkness, because that's why people share their story. That's why people share their testimony, to help others that are going through. So whatever one of her books resonate with you, or maybe you might want to get all three, it's Don't You Dare Text Him Back, A Toxic Relationship Recovery. I've never been to France. She, her. And the last one is Ma OHW, which is the bipolar poet. Like I said, I will link out to them all. And definitely go support her and learn something about trauma and how it affects your life in the meantime. So thank you, Sarah, for being on the show. Thank you for sharing your story. Thank you for allowing us to understand what trauma bonding is, because this was new information for me, and I'm pretty sure it's new information for a lot of my listeners and those who are watching on YouTube or TV. So as we wrap up, do you have any last words?
Yes, no, I want to say thank you for your story and thank you for sharing with me and relating to me. And I just appreciate that so much. And thank you for all you do in your work. And I know that you're helping people as well. And that's just what we're here for. I appreciate you so much.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that. Yeah, I mean, it's not that great of a story to relate with, but I do. Yeah, I mean, I wish we didn't have these stories to tell, but it's part of like our history, and it makes us who we are today. So, yeah, thank you for sharing. Thank you guys for listening. And thank you for tuning in to this week's episode of Transform Your Mind so you can transform your life. Today we're talking about transforming your mind on trauma and how the lingering effects that it leaves on our lives. So there's skills and strategies in order to navigate it. And Sara Lynne is trying to help you with her books that she's written. So thank you guys for tuning in. Thank you, Sarah, for being on the show. Until next time, namaste.